All right, my name's Luke and I've been running my own gardening business for over 10 years. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I would do if I was starting in today with a $2,000 budget, a $10,000 budget, and a $100,000 budget. So the first thing before we get into anything else is that I'm not affiliated with any of these brands that we're going to talk about today. These are genuinely tools that we've used in the business. I do get given some tools to try out from time to time from different brands, but I do get given them from different brands. So I'm just being honest with that to start out with, but honestly, I'm not biased towards a certain brand or another because they all kind of equally give me something from time to time. What I would also say is that I'm starting this off with the assumption that you have a vehicle. I started my business with an X-Trail, that's the car that I had. I wouldn't recommend that. Even though at the time I thought it was a good idea, the reality is it's not the right vehicle for the job. Whilst you might save some money in the short term, you end up actually losing money through inefficiencies, lack of carrying capacity, things like that. If you are going down this path seriously, I would recommend an old secondhand ute, selling the vehicle you have. Hopefully you can find something within your budget. Now, before we get into the actual budget stuff, there are a couple of free things you can do from day one that will get you work and that will give you a lot of wisdom. Here are four. The first thing is a Google My Business account. It's very easy to set up. You'll need some photos. Get some real photos. Don't use stock images off the internet. They're clearly American a lot of the time. People can sniff it out. Just get your friend or a housemate, a sibling, whoever you've got, your wife, children, whatever, and just get them to take some photos of you doing work around your own property, a friend's property. I don't know, just find anything that you can, get some proper photos, chuck it up on there, and that'll be a really good start. Obviously, I'm assuming you've already got your business name and stuff sorted out as well. The next thing you can do for free is actually go on a Facebook group, which is incredibly helpful, called Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia. There's about 7,000 people in there. It's a free group. The advice is really good, and people are actually really supportive on that group for the most part. It's the internet. Everybody's there's random people everywhere on the internet doing weird stuff, but as a group, it's one of the more positive groups I've ever been involved with on the internet, and I'd highly recommend new people getting involved. Also, I posted a post on here asking people what they would do if they were starting a business with $10,000. It got hundreds of comments. Go check it out and see if you can learn anything from it. The third thing I do for free is I would actually contact businesses around my area that are well established and say, hey, look, my name's such and such. I'm starting out and I'm looking for work. Could you pass on some stuff? Do you need any subcontracting work? Build a relationship with these people. The reality is that in this industry, there is not really that much competition between different businesses. The competition is between good, respectable people who take pride in their work and the cowboys who cut corners and leave the industry with a poor reputation. The good operators out there who are overbooked, slammed with work, struggling to find great employees, would actually love to hear from a new person who is honest, reliable, hardworking, will show up when they say. They would really enjoy that, and you never know. You may not need to advertise to start out if you have enough of these relationships, and those people who are overflowing with work can pass on to you. The next thing I do is free, which is a little bit of a selfish plug, is listen to podcasts. Obviously, this is a podcast, a bit of a different video we're doing here, but there's a few good Australian podcasts out there for this industry. Obviously, the one that we do called the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. Gary Ashton's got one called Aussie Lawn Stars, where he's interviewed a whole lot of small businesses in this niche. Very helpful to get real life experience. You've got the Landscaping Podcast by Joel Barnett. You've got Skull Sessions with Ben and BJ. It's a bit loose, that one, but they're great guys and a lot of experience again in the industry. I'll link all those podcasts below. But if you're starting like that, you've got a Google My Business, which people can refer to. It's free. You're on a page of networking people on LMCA. You're networking directly with people in your area. And finally, you're listening to good podcasts, a lot of good information. Knowledge-wise and connections-wise, you're starting so much further ahead than most people, and you haven't spent a dollar. Right, so this is what I would do if I was starting with a $2,000 budget. First thing I want to say is, if I'm starting with that budget, I'm assuming that you're doing this as a part-time job. $2,000 is not going to take you far if you're wanting to do this full-time. This is something that you do on a side hustle on the weekends, something like that. Here's the number one pitfall I see guys and girls in this price budget category. The number one mistake I see them making. The number one mistake is using the residential equipment you already have at home for jobs that are really needing commercial equipment. The problem you have when you start a business is you need to take on the work that you can get. And what you will find is that a lot of people who are willing to go with a new business are the sort of people who are given the bad jobs. The established businesses don't really want those jobs, and so people are looking around and they find somebody like you. You're starting out, fantastic. You got work, well done. Problem is they're often overgrown when you're talking about lawn mowing cleanups. They're overgrown lawns, they're yards that have rubbish in them, rocks, things like that. And your residential equipment is probably going to stall. It's not going to do a very good job, and ultimately, it actually may cost you more money because things will break. You may run into problems. If you can somehow start a business and only do well-maintained yards from day one, yeah, your residential equipment probably would last you a little while for you to build up some income and buy the commercial stuff. That's just not the reality of it. You're going to do overgrown stuff, so you need to get equipment that's suitable for the overgrown stuff. Here's the next problem you have though. A new commercial mower, like a Honda HRU 216, that's already most of your budget gone. You don't have anything left for whip snippers, you don't have anything left for rakes, blowers, grass bags, all that sort of stuff, marketing, whatever. It's gone. So people have a real challenge. Either you find good secondhand commercial equipment on Marketplace, which can be hard, or you struggle with the residential gear that can fit within your budget. However, I do think this is a third way. If I was starting a side hustle lawn or garden business today with $2,000, this is the exact stuff that I would get. So here's the trick. If I was going down a $2,000 budget, I wouldn't do mowing at all. I would focus on hedge trimming and some gardening services, planting, weeding, fertilizing, maybe a little bit of spraying services with a small 5-litre sprayer. I don't have a small 5-litre sprayer, I have expensive 16-litre sprayers, but you get the idea. Here's why. I use this AEG stuff. Again, I'm not sponsored by these people at all, but we do use it. I think the 18 volt range for someone who's starting off from a commercial manufacturer, AEG would be one of them, but you could go with a different brand if you trust them more or you have better access to them. The reason why I'd be going down this is that all of this that you've shown you here is well under the $2,000 budget we have, and everything here is rated for commercial use. We have a set of powered secateurs. Now these are the most expensive thing on this list. Really good for chopping things back. You can use them instead of a pair of loppers. Now if you were going on a cheaper budget, you could even go something less like this Wolfgarten pair of anvil loppers here, and they would do pretty close, if not better in some scenarios than you would get from battery loppers. This saves your hands though. The blower, the hedge trimmer, and then you would have a pair of shears. The reason is that if you're doing really high-end work, these guys can sometimes tear at the leaf. Really good for efficiency, but if you want a nice little finish, you would go over with a pair like this. This is an expensive pair of shears here. You're looking around the $150 mark for something like this. We got these from Strata Green. There's other places around that can give you those sorts of tools. But things like this, a pair of Felco secateurs, these are number 2s, sort of industry standard, and a pair like a silky saw like this. These are 60, 80 bucks depending on how big you get them. You can have a full, what I would consider professional setup, and I know that because we actually use these tools, and you can fit that within your budget. The big benefit of this, you still have room for garden bags, rakes, things like that. Genuinely speaking, you could start a more hedging focused business with brand new equipment from day one and keep it under $2,000. The negatives of going down this path though. One is that hedging is quite physical and there's a lot of attention to detail needed, a good eye. With mowing, a lot of the difference between a good mow and a bad mow, it's just the height that you're setting your mower at, to be honest. But with hedging, no, it is a skill. I would definitely be practicing a lot. If you have no experience with hedging, this is probably risky. If you have some friends who have hedges, you want to go out there and try, build up some experience first. that would be a wise move. However, if you have experience, if you are good at this, I would actually start a side hustle with something more gardening focused. And then as you build up your income from the business, you can then buy a commercial mower from day one. You can buy a whippersnipper from day one. You can buy a telescopic pruner if you wanted that. All that kind of stuff will come with time. If I'm starting a $2,000 budget, this is probably more like what I would actually go for. All right, let's get into somewhere with a $10,000 budget. The thing about having a $10,000 budget is it opens up so much for you that I almost can't list all the options. But here's two things I'd be thinking about when I'm making a budget like this. The number one thing is I would be trying to get as much new stuff as I can as tools, but I actually think secondhand trailers and things like that can be where you make and save some money. I would also be leaving money for things like marketing, for things like really good uniforms, making a really good logo, getting sign writing on your vehicle if you can afford it. Things like that, you will underestimate sometimes the power of some little tools, of some little gestures, of some little things like that. And honestly, a really nicely painted trailer, some fresh logos, a smile when you rock up, and a little bit of deodorant, because you're gonna stink sometimes when you're working out in the field. Those little 1%ers make all the difference. Sometimes when we're making a plan to spend, for a business, to set up a business, we spend all of our money on tools and equipment and things like that, and we forget the 1%ers. Think about the little things that will separate you from the competition from day one, and you may find that they are some of the best investments you'll ever get. But let's run through some equipment, because you're gonna be wondering, what are the best tools out there? Well, great channel to look at would be Turf and Tools. Tim the Lawnmower Man runs that one. Friend of the channel. I think, in my opinion, I don't think of anybody who's tested out more tools than he has. But here are some of the best tools that I can vouch for tools in this industry. The number one would be the Honda HRU 216. That is the industry standard mower. I've used a lot of different mowers in my time. There's a lot that come close and some that beat it in certain specific areas like mulching or its ability to take on overgrown stuff or how low it cuts, things like that. But as a general all-rounder, the HRU 216 is the best mower that I have used, in my opinion. Some people really vouch for the Massport Contractor. Some really vouch for the Bush Ranger. I'll link them both below as well. Again, I'm not affiliated with anybody, but that is kind of the hub. One thing I'll say as well, don't think about the purchase price of this mower. You might look at it and think it's expensive. The reality is that if you are charging right, you will make so much money from that mower that you won't realize the cost of it. I know a lot of people out there who will buy a brand new HRU 216 every single year, not because they need to, but it gives them peace of mind in case something goes wrong. They keep the other one as a backup. And ultimately they're making so much money from their mowing that a $1,600, $1,700 mower just is a blip on the radar on their accounting. So when we're talking about $10,000, you always need a lot of handheld tools, whippersnippers, edges, things like that. The industry standard has been the Husqvarna, I can't remember the code, I'll put it on the screen, and the Stihl FS94, or what is here, which is a KN94, which is a combi tool. If you are stuck on a budget somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000, anything with a combi tool, to me, is a great option. It allows you to put on hedge trimmer attachments. I don't have any here. You can see some of the attachments here, like chainsaw attachment, things like that, edger attachment. If you are running on a real tight budget, that is one way to go. However, some people don't like them. I love them, that's why we have them. Some people don't like them because there's more parts that wear out, but the parts are cheap and it takes a long time for them to wear out. But a petrol whippersnipper like this, that's been the industry staple. However, we are getting to the point where some battery equipment, like this Ego SCX 4500, and the Greenworks here as well, I'll show you that in a second. But these battery whippies, that's cord's too long, so why it's noisy. But these battery whippies, Darwin grip like this is a bent Darwin grip. I accidentally backed into a wall, I'll admit that on camera. These battery whippies are actually really good. They're very powerful. The runtime can be a little bit of a problem if you're doing a lot of overgrown work. Petrol's probably better in those scenarios. But this one, a lot of the weight is at the back because there's a battery there, the motor's there. Some of you would prefer this style here from Greenworks. The code on this is ridiculous, 82ST1242DP. But this is a little bit more balanced. I would say at the moment, out of these three options, if I'm picking a whippersnipper, out of the Stihl, the Ego, the Greenworks, this Greenworks has got a good balance to it. But that's all preference. Go to a shop. You might like chocolate cake. I like carrot cake. You know, you like Hungry Jack's. I like KFC, whatever. A lot of this stuff, you can't make decisions on a spreadsheet. The stats, some things might be more powerful. They might last longer, whatever. But ultimately, when you get something in your hand, you might just find that something with the motor in the head like this, a little bit more balanced, batteries at the back, you like that better. Maybe you get this, you hate this. Go to your mower shop and go try some stuff. There's a lot of good brands out there. These are just some of the options, but I can say that all these options will work in a commercial setting. Once you get the batteries as well, you have options then for chainsaws, blowers, things like that. And if I was starting today, would I go battery or petrol? Hedge trimmers, 100% battery. They're the best. Blowers, most of the time, battery. Backpack blowers, I'm probably still going petrol because most of the time when I'm using a backpack, it's a really long run time and blowers are thirsty on the energy. Other than that, I reckon battery is probably winning 80% of the time. But then again, if you jump on LMCA like we talked about before, get some opinions, get chatting with people, meet some people in the industry, because there's no such thing as the one size fits all. Something that suits you may not suit somebody else. So you may be asking then, well, Luke, that's a lot of waffle. Can you give me some lists? What would you actually buy? Well, before we get into it, there's one more thing I want you to think about. It's hard to do this with a $10,000 budget, but I would be starting to think about specialized services. Hedging kind of falls into this. Product applications kind of fall into this, like fertilization, weed control. But what I have found is when you really start to earn money in this industry is when you can differentiate yourself from everybody else. If all you're going to do is standard lawn mowing jobs that everybody else is doing, you can quote against 5, 6, 7 other businesses, price wars, people drive down to the bottom of the price list, forces you to be cheaper. There's some problems with going down that path. If you could differentiate yourself and go down a path that's a little bit more niche, the challenge is that there's less work, that's why it's more niche, but the benefit is that if you can attract those clients, well, then you actually have less competition. Great ways of doing this in this industry are actually the more expensive pieces of equipment that I have behind me. But I would be thinking at a $10,000 budget, is there something that I can get a second-hand aerator, maybe an old used vertimower, maybe something like that, hydro seeding as in a small way, maybe a large sprayer, things like that. Start being creative. How can you differentiate yourself from the industry? So here are some lists that I would do. If I was starting out today, assuming I've got a ute, I'd be starting with a trailer. I'd be getting sign writing on that trailer. I'd be then getting myself a Honda HRU 216. I would be then getting a mostly battery setup. Ego, Greenworks, those kind of businesses. Commercial businesses, again, find the ones that suit you. There's lots, AEG, Husqvarna, Crest. Find the one that suits you, but I can vouch for those two because I have them. I would also be getting, though, a petrol-powered whippersnipper if I was going to do more overgrown stuff because the runtime's going to be there, or you would invest in more batteries. Either way, find the one that best suits you. But if I'm getting that set up, you can see that a lot of our budget's already spent. The rest that I would be getting, I would be using that money to start myself a website. I would be using that money to do things like maybe some Facebook marketing, some things like that, saving a little bit to actually get work in the door. One of the mistakes that people make is they spend all their money on equipment. The problem is that they sit around with this equipment waiting for work to come in. That's not going to happen for a while. Eventually you'll build a reputation, and through word of mouth and through that reputation, work will start coming, naturally through the door. You're starting from brand new. You don't have that yet. So think about that and calculate that in your budget. The second option I would be looking at, if I had a $10,000 budget and I wanted to simply go down a specialized route, what I would actually do is I would buy an aerator. This billy goat behind me here that you can see there, they're about $8,000 today. That's most of your budget. But if you can do that as a side business, keeping the job you have. You know, this is a different strategy. If you want to go full-time, this won't work. But the amount of money you can earn from those is really high. Why? Because to hire them is about $120 from a lot of shops, 160 from some, a little bit less for half day from others. But what that means is that there's a lot of jobs, especially in these new residential estates, where you're only doing 50, 30, 60 square meters, where you can charge $120 and work for 6 minutes. The people who are buying this, they're actually getting a deal. The reason is they're gonna have to spend $120 and somehow get a trailer, right, if they don't have one already, or a work ute, and then spend all their time driving there, getting it, driving back, aerating. It's a lot of work. For the same amount of money, they can hire you. A piece of equipment like that, though, is not gonna fill your books all that quickly, and it's more of a seasonal work. So what you can do with that is start with that, do it as a side hustle. It's a $10,000 side hustle because you'll still need a trailer, some sign writing, a few things like that. But as the money comes through, you can then do things like buy vertimowers next to it, more specialized equipment, and from day one, focus your business on that line, that niche, that more high income kind of category of work. So there's two options for you. The full-time setup where you're focusing on lawn mowing jobs, like what most people can do, or the second one is the more niche work, high hourly rate, has its pitfalls because it's going to be harder to build a business that's sustainable, especially through the colder months. But if you have a job already and you're happy to keep that for another 6 months or so, that could be a really good option. So then obviously the next question is the $100,000 mark. What would you do if you had $100,000 to start a business? I kind of wouldn't. I kind of wouldn't spend $100,000 if I'm starting a business from day one, if I'm being honest. It's a lot of risk if you've never been in business before. Even if you had $100,000 to invest and you were kind of comfortable with the risk. For me, I would start probably around the $20,000, $30,000 investment mark and go down that niche route. So you could start with the aerator, you could start with some spraying gear, you could start with even some mowing gear and kind of do more complete lawn care packages. That's what we do at Silverstone Gardening. And garden care packages and things like that. And then what you could do is find the niches that you are within those niches, like what do you actually enjoy? So yes, lawn care and high-end lawn care is a niche, but maybe you don't like the renovation services, you prefer more the package work. Maybe you don't like the package work, you like renovations. Maybe you like turf installs. There's a lot of different paths that can go down when you've got a bigger chunk of money to go and invest, and it would be premature to go and spend it all without any experience. However, there are some of you out there who you've actually been gardening for a long time, you have the money, and you kind of know the path you want to go down. In that scenario, I might be a little bit more comfortable with that. But honestly, $100,000 to start a lawn care business is a lot. However, what would I do if I had $100,000? I'd kind of do what I'm doing here. Let me show you. So the first thing we have here is our BA Pumps sprayer. This has what you call, I should say, a nozzleless boom. The reason why we have this is we do a lot of stuff around trees, and it's easy to store and pack away. You can put a normal 6-meter boom on that. The type of stuff we're using this for is like school oval applications, commercial grounds and things like that, where we go to do fertilizers, insecticides, herbicides, wetting agents, soil amendments, things like that. This might not look like much, but the hourly rate you can get from something like this is really high. The reason is that these kind of services, not many people do them. It's an expensive bit of kit, costs about $6,000, $7,000 more if you wanted a boom on it, but you can get about $400, $500, $600 an hour for the type of work you're doing with it, depending on where you're applying it, and if you can get the right kind of people who are interested in that kind of work. Much harder to find the right clients, but once you have those right clients and you're delivering results, a lot of them don't care. You might go, well, how the hell do you get such a high hourly rate from a piece of equipment like that? It's because a lot of the time, it just doesn't take you that long. And if somebody has a knapsack sprayer, say like something like this, and they're gonna apply something on say 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square meter yard, the reality is that you would be cheaper than somebody with a knapsack and earn way more money with a machine like that. That is where you get the Goldilocks zone in this industry. Efficiency and competitiveness on price will still equal a really high hourly rate. The next thing I'll show you is this walker. This is an MD21D. These are expensive mowers, really expensive mowers. Brand new, these things cost in the mid-50s. I got this secondhand. The problem with these mowers, let me not tell you it's all rosy. Because they are specialized bits of equipment, they do break. There's a lot of real specialist parts on it. But the thing about this is it's a collection mower. What that means is that there is actually a pipe, a tube underneath here that delivers the clippings to the catcher. That catcher then you can drive and you can dump it. And this one specifically has what you call a high lift system. So you can dump it into a trailer if you needed to. The amount of money, return on investment you can get from these, really high as well. Easily $200, $300 an hour, as long as you have the right type of work. These mowers, whilst they're a very expensive machine, if you have the work, can actually be really affordable. And the reason is that you may be cutting a job that one job on its own might be a $500, $1,000 job that you do every week, every second week. And on finance, a machine like this might cost you a few $100s a week, but one job can pay it off. Don't go risking it for it, but it is something that is really good for a high hourly rate. The next thing we have here is your stand-on mower. This is a much more affordable option, very versatile, probably more suitable for more people than a walker like this. These are finicky, these can break down. They don't like overgrown lawns that much. These hustlers, especially if you put on a Cash Pro, I find the Cash Pro over here, it's a bit dirty. Ignore my dying spath of film there. Cash Pro, it's Australian invention. You chuck that on the side of the mower, allows you to catch. It just gives you more options having a catcher on the mower. Super versatile machine once you put that on there. You can go overgrown stuff. Because it's small, it can fit between a lot of gates. Obviously that's a 36. There's some brands like Skag and Wright that'll do 32-inch mowers. Maybe worth looking at that. I think Gravely has one too. All commercial machines as far as I'm aware. However, the reason that is a stand-on mower and not a sit-down mower, two reasons. One, and the main one for me, is that because it's much shorter, you can actually fit it on sideways onto a truck or a standard trailer. Now, as long as your weight is balanced with the trailer, you could do that. But a normal mower, we tried this, we had one before, we actually sold it to buy this. Normal mowers, you can't do that. And one of the things about business is efficiency. So even though this machine costs more than a commercial sit-down machine, because it is more transportable, you can actually get it into more places. You can get more work from it and you can transport it easier. It wins in those sorts of areas. Some people as well like them because they have more ability on slopes and there's a little bit better visibility. So in some areas we've got a lot of obstacles, trees, things like that, a little bit of slopes, these are the better machines. Now we've already talked about this kind of gear, but this is specialist turf gear. Aerator, vertigroomer, cylinder mower. Some of you will be surprised. You're like, how did Luke get so far into a video on equipment without talking about cylinder? Being WA, we use a lot of these cylinder mowers. They give you the highest quality cut you can possibly get. However, these days they're $6,000 to $10,000. And if you are not able to deliver on things like fertilization, weed control, aeration, top dressing, vertimilling, things like that, you may not quite get the finish from these that you can get. In other words, this is kind of the cherry on top of the cake, not the cake itself. The cake itself is your product application, your aeration, things like that. So they're machines that I love. I really do love them. Honestly, this machine, you can see it's been absolutely abused. The newer ones are out at the moment. This is a backup now, but even though it's been abused, I've only ever had one thing break on this in 7 years, 8 years. How long have I had it? 7 years, I think, which is this spring. That's 100% true. I bought that back in the day for second hand. It was $5,000, hadn't been used much. They were about $6,000 at the time. Even though it's a very expensive machine, super high value for money. If you keep going down the list, you've got your classic Honda HRU 216. Talked about that before. But also little specialist gear like this, like the MoMaster Verti Edger. If you're doing a lot of renovations, those little blades will get into some areas that a lot of other machines can't. I'm not trying to sell you on any specific brand here or any specific sort of theory or method. It's more that I'm just trying to show you and help you think about things if you're going at the higher price point that will separate you from the competition. This is what we've done. What we do is high-end turf care services. We do it for people who really care about how their yard looks. Obviously that's a small percentage of the market, but there's enough people to sustain a business. Those jobs are really fun, and because you separate yourself from a lot of the other people in the industry, you can charge a high hourly rate. And when you buy, like we talked about before, really efficient pieces of equipment, those tools can earn you really high hourly rates without actually being more expensive at all. The final thing I'll say is, if you just focus on equipment, you're actually missing the biggest picture and the most important part of business, which is customer satisfaction. Equipment is good, and you need to think through your decisions before you spend money on it, but you're much better off focusing on doing really high quality work, being really reliable, having great admin systems, great marketing systems, all that sort of stuff. If you're interested in learning about that sort of stuff, I've done a course. It's called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery course. It's not cheap. However, if you want a discount off it, we're doing a live tour with the podcast around Australia, Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Hunter Valley and Brisbane. At those events, I can announce that we'll have a 30% discount off the course. If you want to find out more about the course, click here. If you want to get free content, the best podcast we've done on the business side of running a small lawn care business or a garden care business, click this link here. But all the best for business. And hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast.